Good afternoon, I'm Vashan Brown with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. We begin with a developing story in the region. A hurricane watch remains in effect for Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines as Tropical Storm Gonzalo continues along the path to the Caribbean. Tropical Storm Gonzalo is expected to begin affecting portions of the Windward Islands on Saturday after gaining hurricane strength. Forecasters say the storm's structure has become a little disheveled and there's still uncertainty in Gonzalo's intensity forecast. They say out of an abundance of caution, the official forecast continues to show Gonzalo becoming a hurricane in about 24 hours. Rainfall is expected over Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago and the Windward Islands, which includes St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Dominica from tomorrow to Sunday. At 11 o'clock this morning, the center of Tropical Storm Gonzalo was moving toward the west near 13 miles per hour. Maximum sustained winds are near 62 miles per hour. Now back on the local scene, a man who is believed to be one of the shooters in the incident on Constant Spring Road in St. Andrew this morning is in hospital under police guard after he turned up for treatment. Another of the alleged gunmen was shot and killed during the reported confrontation with the police. 2 police officers were shot and injured. The incident happened about 1:30. It was reported that 2 policemen were on patrol when they observed a white Honda Civic parked on the road. They approached the vehicle and attempted to make inquiries. The occupants reportedly fired on the policemen, hitting them both before attempting to flee. The injured officers returned the gunfire and the car crashed a short distance away. Now one of the men ran from the vehicle and the driver, who received a bullet wound, was held. The injured persons were taken to hospital where the unidentified driver died while undergoing treatment. A retrograde step, the response from the Commissioner of the Independent Commission of Investigations, Indicom, Terence Williams, to the government's decision not to give the Commission prosecutorial powers. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck told Parliament on Tuesday that his administration no longer thinks it's necessary for Indicom to be given such powers. But speaking on TVJ's All Angles last night, Mr. Williams says the decision is bad for police accountability. The Privy Council ruled earlier this year that Indicom does not have the power to arrest, charge and prosecute members of the security forces, but a Joint Select Committee of Parliament in 2015 said Indicom should be given those powers. This was the Justice Minister Delroy Chuck in Parliament on Tuesday.
Mr. Speaker, in light of the Privy Council's ruling and the recent increase in the numbers of prosecutors in the DPP's office, the present administration reconsidered the Joint Select Committee's recommendation to vest Indicom with prosecutorial powers and thought it no longer necessary for such prosecutorial powers to be given to Indicom.
Outgoing Commissioner of Indicom Terence Williams says the government's decision not to give the Commission prosecutorial powers is a bad move.
I'm very disappointed. I think it's going to set back police accountability many years. The police in Jamaica are being now put in a position where they're going to be somewhat exceptional and above the law, in that if the police bring in a case against you or I, they need no DPP permission to bring it, they can bring it. But to bring a case against a policeman, it's now the administration is saying the DPP must permit it, and indeed a combination of the DPP and the police must put it before the court.
So Mr. Williams has this question.
Why can't Indicom enjoy the same powers as the police have to put matters before the court?
The minister's statement in Parliament did not mention whether Indicom would be given the powers to arrest and charge members of the security forces. Mr. Chuck spoke specifically about prosecutorial powers, but Mr. Williams says based on his information, the plan is that the powers to arrest and charge will be between the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and the police.
What I'm particularly distressed about this is the process to reach the decision was that there was a Joint Select Committee now almost 7 years ago. And the Joint Select Committee heard all of the submissions by Police Federation, everybody. And they said, no, Indicom must be able to arrest, charge, and prosecute. And then what happens? Over the years now, the police, behind the scenes, lobby the government to say, no, Indicom mustn't have that power. And the government folds to the police lobbying.
In the meantime, Mr. Williams believes the government's decision is not good for the work of Indicom.
It weakens Indicom as an institution. It weakens police accountability. It is a retrograde step by the administration. I only have a few days left, but for the few days that I have left, I will criticize it, and I will continue to say it's a very poor step.
Concerns this afternoon about the operations of the Emergency Powers Review Tribunal. Now, the tribunal adjudicates on appeals brought by persons who have been detained under the states of public emergency. Attorney-at-law Isaac Buchanan described the tribunal as toothless.
There are situations where our competent judges who are trained and sits in the court of appeal, in the court and the court of appeal to uphold the Constitution, says what you have on the man. Officer presents himself, and the judge says not sufficient, give him bail without conditions, and the officer says hold on, the judge think she know too much, him know too much, take him up in the state of emergency, and the minister says I'm satisfied. And then the toothless tribunal says, well, the minister is satisfied. We are not here to use reasonable doubt. As long as the minister drinks his tea and waves his pen, we sign and we're okay and we're different from the court. The court do their thing. And you disrespect a judge, and that's a breach of the doctrinal separations of power.
What we're saying is that the tribunals are told by the regulation to deem all persons in custody as being in lawful custody. And that's what the regulations say. So they start with the assumption that the persons are in custody lawful. That's the first thing. Secondly, the tribunal will also tell you that they're not there to replace the court. They're not trying the matters to decide whether or not, Mr. Matty, say you killed somebody or not. What they're there to do is just to look at, is there simply enough persons who you don't know, unknown sources even to the tribunal, who make allegations about you. So
both Mr. Clark and Mr. Buchanan were speaking on TVJ's All Angles last night following an order by the Supreme Court that 5 men detained under several of the existing states of public emergency should be freed. The 5 men had been detained in states of emergency in Westmoreland, St. Andrews South, and East Kingston. The men had asked the court to have their detentions declared unlawful and unconstitutional. We now take a break on the midday news, but we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Continuing the news now. The Education Ministry says it will make significant changes to schools across the island in an effort to prevent the spread of the coronavirus when students return to the classroom in September. The issue was raised at yesterday's virtual launch of a high-level commission on education transformation. Prince Moore reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic has forced the government to institute changes to Jamaica's education system. But many have been asking, what will schools look like come September when students return to the classroom? The Ministry of Education says it will adopt what it calls a blended teaching method in all schools come September as part of efforts to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Education Minister Carl Samuda says the approach will see students alternating between physically attending school and doing classes online.
As I speak, we are finalizing preparations for the beginning of the 2020-21 school year. We have adopted a blended approach. So in September, our students will receive instructions both face-to-face and via distance and online teaching.
While the blended approach is a remedy for teaching and learning during the COVID-19 pandemic, Prime Minister Andrew Holness believes there are other gaps in the education system.
The new World Bank Human Capital Index ranks each country in terms of productivity of the next generation of workers and identifies Jamaica as among the countries that have made significant human capital gains. Despite the progress, however, important gaps remain. The World Bank study points out that children born in Jamaica today will be only 54% as productive when they grow up as they could be if they enjoyed complete education and full health.
It's why Mr. Holness on Wednesday launched a high-level commission on education transformation. The commission, which consists of 14 members, will be tasked with conducting a comprehensive review and assessment of the country's education system, after which a report is to be completed by March next year. Mr. Holness believes the commission can help to fill those gaps.
What I'm looking for is not tinkering or tweaking, but real radical change that will put Jamaica on an entirely new trajectory to growth and prosperity.
The commission will be chaired by Professor Orlando Patterson, a Jamaican who is professor of sociology at Harvard University in the United States. The commission also includes Dean of the Faculty of Science and Technology at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Professor Michael Taylor, Acting President of the University of Technology, Professor Colin Giles, as well as CEO of Edufocal, Gordon Swaby, among others. Prince Moore, TVJ News.
It's not immediately clear if Holland Producers Limited will be able to pay the government for lands occupied for roughly a year. SCJ Holdings and its partners will be doing an assessment, but so far, the company's financial standing is not looking good. Andrea Chisholm has details from Parliament's Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, PAAC.
Holland Producers Limited HPL got permission from SCJ Holdings to use 2,400 acres of land in Holland St. Elizabeth pending the finalization of a lease agreement. As is usually the case, HPL would be required to pay the lease amount retroactively from the time it took control of the property. PAAC member Mikhail Phillips raised concerns with Managing Director of SCJ Holdings, Joseph Shuker.
So there are two issues. One, you blundered for not putting in a lease within that 1 year period. And two, is that now that they have even sent you something, they need to pay something to the taxpayers.
So may I member, let me start off by saying I have to agree with you that a lease should have been in place at an earlier date. No question. It puts a number of issues beyond dispute.
So how much will Holland Producers Limited HPL be paying SCJ for the July 2019 to July 2020 period? Mr. Shakir said an assessment will be done in conjunction with the Agriculture Ministry and Agro Investment Corporation AIC, which now owns Holland Estate. It's interesting to note that HPL's account summary shows lease income of roughly $6.5 million and expenditure $6.2 million. Accounts receivables or money to be collected stand at approximately $7.2 million.
Clearly the accounts, when verified, will have an implication on the outcome of those discussions. Because if it turns out as has been indicated, which is that there is uncollectible receivables. Now, I don't know the quality of the receivables, but if they are uncollected receivables of $7 million, now you and I and the members will understand that if this is owed by farmers, it's going to be held to collect it.
As for accounts payable, meaning money owed, that stands at roughly $6.6 million.
I have a good sense from the advice, from the inquiries I have made, that the accounts payable represent almost in its entirety outstanding security charges for securing the property. Why I look to these numbers here, because this may end up telling you what is the financial position of HPL. It may be an insolvent company.
SCJ Holdings was introduced to HPL through a letter from MP and then Minister without portfolio in the Agriculture Ministry, J.C. Hutchinson. Mr. Hutchinson has since apologized, stating that his actions were never for personal benefit. Mr. Phillips questioned the track record of HPL, which was incorporated in May 2019.
But you took up an entity that had no track record at all. Was it because of the word of the minister himself?
But clearly the recommendation of the Member of Parliament is significant.
It turns out that one of the directors of HPL, Lola Marshall Williams, was Mr. Hutchinson's partner and mother of his child. She has since resigned from the company as well as the board of the Rural Agriculture Development Agency, RADA. PAAC Chairman Dr. Wickham McNeil read a section of a report from SCJ Holdings.
For the avoidance of doubt, it needs to be expressly stated that SCJ had absolutely no knowledge of any connection between Mrs. Marshall Williams might have had with any government of Jamaica official.
Andrea Chisholm, TVJ News.
Volunteers from the corporate area participated in a cleanup exercise of the Sergani beach along the Kingston Harbour recently. Over 150 bags of waste material were removed from the beach. There is also a call for persons to be more careful with garbage disposal.
I think it's a very bad practice. I think it's a selfish habit, and I think persons need to become more conscious about how they dispose their waste and their garbage.
I think it's terrible, right? And I think that we need to educate the children, because in a lot of the schools, if you go there after lunch break, there's garbage all around the school, and they should be told to pick it up. You know, if they don't do it in the schools or at their homes, then they won't come out or grow up to know what to do.
Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Matthew Samuda, confirmed that there was a major reduction in styrofoam and plastic bottles on the beach. He says despite the positive sign, there's need for a joint approach from all stakeholders to address the issue of garbage disposal.
There are several programs geared at dealing with. I know Nepal has a plastic initiative, a plastic reduction initiative in the area. NSWMA has a project for separation. Most of these projects are in their infancy and in their pilot stage. There's a pilot project going on for the deposit refund scheme with Jamaica Recycling Group. So there's several initiatives coming together. What we need now is to upscale our ambition and to really get everybody to work together to tie the varying programs into one. There's work to be done in terms of how people behave, and then there's work to be done certainly at the government level and whatever in terms of increasing capacity. We have noted several new garbage trucks added to the fleet recently with NSWMA, which is a step in the right direction and a big move for the Ministry of Local Government and a big move from Ministry of Finance.
Time now for sports. Netball Jamaica could be in line to benefit from the International Netball Federation COVID-19 Response Fund, which has been created for each region to address financial challenges caused by the coronavirus pandemic. The INF said the fund would provide immediate support to those members with the greatest need. Membership fees for 2021 will be reduced by 50% compared to 2020 for those organizations who have paid in full for this year as part of measures designed to alleviate the financial impact of the pandemic on the sport and its members. The INF is also set to enter the final stage of the planning process for its new strategic plan, due to be launched later this year. Now, members provided feedback to the INF on the plan in a series of regional online roadshows held last month. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Don't forget to join us at 7 for a Primetime News package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a wonderful afternoon.